Yeah. Well, what's
Yeah,
so busy right now that you can't do the most important thing
I know.
that you do in your life, which is my show?
I know. I know. I actually I actually have someone waiting for a business appointment. That's all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you
Yeah,
got to make some money, so
a
that's
little bit.
important.
Yeah. Just enough to live.
Yeah, because if you lose your house and everything and you're in the street, it'll be more difficult for us to do these shows.
It will, but I am prepared to do it under the bridge if I have to.
Haha, great. All right, so
Yeah.
let's get into it. First, I'll talk about my guest. I don't know if you've had him on your show, but I've got Antonio Paris.
No.
Professor Antonio Paris. I've had him on before, about a year ago or so, I think. But he moved to Florida. He was in Washington at that time. At that time, he was working like with the Pentagon and DoD, and now he is a
Wow.
professor of astronomy. Yeah, so he's in astronomy and technology. He's had a lot of exciting positions in aerospace, and he's actually an astronaut candidate right now. So it's a chance he'll go to space, but he's also into UFOs and he's done UFO research for quite a while. He pops up at conferences here and there, but of course he's a busy guy. However, he's been getting in a lot of news articles, including like Discover Magazine, and some of you who follow, our daily news headlines or my Facebook might have seen some of these stories because I've posted, I think, all of them I've come across. But they are trying to reproduce the wow signal.
Huh.
Yeah, so this famous signal that could potentially be extraterrestrial, and he's gotten a lot of press for this because he's, written a paper and he's a bona fide astronomer. So yeah, pretty exciting.
Well, I talked to Seth Shostak about the WOW signal. He said it was not in today's world of SETI, it's not that big of a deal.
Hmm.
What is well, I'm sure you're going to get into it with the interview, but
Hmm.
is there a big difference
Between,
between what they're hearing today and the WOW signal?
well, they hear. It sounds like they hear a lot of varieties now because they've done so much more, and so we get into that a bit. But so, for instance, it was a hydrogen signal. Not that I completely understand, what that means, but at the time that was very rare. But now it's not. However, we get into what that means and essentially how and their experiment. They're essentially the leading hypothesis as to what that signal was, as far as if it was something, uh, a celestial object. That's what they're going to test to either prove
Ah,
that to be true or prove that to be wrong. So,
wow.
but we
Ah,
talk about that. So pretty interesting stuff.
yeah. Yeah, that'll be a good show.
So a lot of fun. But before we do that, with your limited time, let's get into as much news as we can. And why don't you go ahead and start us off?
All right, relax. We have time. We have plenty of time.
Oh,
We're
okay.
fine. Yeah. All right. So
So
I would like to
Martin, not so short on time, Willis.
I'll make it work.
All
All
right.
right. So this is an interesting case, and I love some of these old cases that are posted by Roger Marsh on your website. And this one is an Idaho witness sketches details from a low hovering UFO. And this one looks like all kinds of things. This happened back in 1977, and it's a disc shape, and I encourage the listener to check it out. It's a real funky looking disc, if I've ever seen one. It has like I don't know what else to call it. It looks like a nipple or top or something. It's really strange. It looks like some type of baby
Whoa.
pacifier or something. I'm not
Some sort
sure.
of protrusion.
Yes. Um, and it seems to me there was some other discs from way in the past that had some type of protrusion coming up like this. But anyway, this happened back, and this guy registered the date as May 5th, 1977, and he noticed this thing that was hovering over the roof of his neighbor's house as he pulled in the driveway, and he didn't actually report this until just recently, March, going all the way back to then. And so that's a good point. Someone can still report these things. Doesn't matter how far back they are. So as he looked up from the road, um, he seemed to hear in his mind like an authoritative male voice saying, This is not of this world, which is kind of unusual. That's what he reported, and he got out of the truck and he watched it for 20 or 30 minutes, and his passenger did not stay outside with him. She went immediately into their home as she was concerned for her safety, and her children were there as well. But check out the drawings. This is really quite incredible, and there's a drawing of the street where it was. Everything is pretty detailed.
Yeah, the drawings are fun. They remind me of like some old Da Vinci or something like
Yeah.
because there's so many detailed notes uh,
Hmm. Oh
that they
yes,
have around
they're
it. Yeah,
annotated for sure. Yeah,
this
heavily annotated.
fog swirling around it, and the nature of the base of the craft and everything. So yeah, really interesting sighting. I agree.
Now, and then where in the article does it mention, is this his original drawings that he did right at the time it happened?
You know what? I don't remember. I'm assuming so, but I don't know that Roger addressed that
Yeah,
in there.
yeah. Because I know that's really important. If anyone has a sighting out there, is to immediately write down, without being interrupted by anyone or any other witness, as a matter of fact, make sure that you draw your own pictures and notes as soon as you can, right after you have a sighting.
That's a good question, though. I mean, that would be important to know
Hmm.
as to when those were made, and it doesn't say. So, good question.
Yeah.
So, just to review a bit, I mean, I had a show all about this a couple weeks ago, but the next news story here. But I did want to mention it and hear if you know much about this case. But that American Airlines UFO report that was heard on the ham radio.
Oh yes. Hmm.
Yeah, so I interviewed Erica Lukes about it, and
Right.
then I wrote up a story about it. And it is pretty exciting. I mean, it's really neat that the guy heard this on his ham radio when he was listening to communications, and then the researchers were able to find the audio online in the airline audio archives, and then do a FOIA request to get an official copy of that particular transmission, and so it's pretty cool.
Now, have they actually gotten the documents returned, or is it tapes they're actually looking for?
No, they have. They've already. It took only 6 weeks for the FAA to get back to them.
That's kind of record time from what I
Isn't
hear.
it? Yeah, that's
Yes.
really surprising that they got back so quickly, which is nice. It seems like the FAA gets back fairly quickly with whatever they're going to get you, if they're going to give you anything. But
Ah.
yeah, really surprising that they very quickly came back with radar data, some, I guess, logs, and the uh, audio. Now, names and stuff aren't in there, so they don't have the name of the pilots and everything. But and the only concern is that the researchers feel that the audio might have been edited.
Ah.
It's difficult to say or not because in the transmission, the guy says, "I see a bright orange square. We're flying over it." And he asks, "Do you know what that is?" And the tower says, "No." He says, "It's below us. It's been there for a while now. We don't know what it is. What town are we close to?" And they say Nephi, Utah. And he says, "Okay, cool. Now I'll go see what I can find." So Mark D'Antonio, for instance, has said it's a possibility that there was a controlled fire below him on the ground, and that could be what it was. And there were some radar uh, hits there, but as the radar researcher says, um, that could be due to they're erratic. They're kind of all over the place. It's not like one thing moving. And so Mark's argument is that smoke does show up on radar, and that's what it could have been. So that's a possibility. However,
Ah.
the person who originally heard the ham radio said he thought he heard them say that this object was a mile wide and it was keeping pace with them. We don't have audio to confirm that that's what they
Oh.
said, but that's what the witness is.
Wow. That's too bad you don't have that. Now I've actually have heard of and I'm sure you heard this too, of one square looking orange UFO, and that was Jan Harzen's sighting when he was young. I'm not sure if you're aware of that,
Well,
but
oh yeah, I've had him on the show several times. We got an interview on our website about with him on that. But on
But there
YouTube,
wasn't a mile wide though.
well, that was very different though. That also had these weird like devices on it, like these landing pads and like he said springs. So like this technology that looked really old.
Wow,
Yeah, his sighting is really weird,
it is. Yeah.
Jan's.
I forgot about the springs. You're right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
pretty cool sighting he had there.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's a really cool story, and just so people know that I do have that story up, so go check that out. Really interesting stuff. Utah MUFON and Erica Lukes did a great job investigating this, along with UFOs Northwest and William Puckett.
Now,
So
before we move on, I've heard that it's very, very difficult to get any radar data from the FAA. Is this have they changed their tune about that a little?
I don't know. I hear conflicting things because I had Robert Powell on not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
You've had him on
Yep.
recently, even, and he's talked about how it's easier to get radar data from the Air Force than the FAA. However,
Hmm.
they very easily, it seems, got radar data from the FAA. So these things seem hit or miss. I mean, I had a hard time. I've always had a hard time getting stuff from the Air Force. I've gotten some, but uh, I don't know. I guess it's hit or miss. I don't know.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah, weird.
Weird.
Otherwise, I guess the last signing to talk about this is another Roger Marsh posting from MUFON, another one with some sketches, and but this one's recent. So this was seen at about 10 p.m. on March 8th, 2016, so about a month ago. And this is a triangular shape, and again, somebody drew uh, pictures of it. So they said that they were traveling, on the road when they saw a this craft coming. They saw a bunch of lights in the configuration. At first, they thought they were helicopters, but as they got closer, they saw that there was a color to the body of the object against the dark sky, and that the lights were on all three corners, and between there were a couple of more white, very, very, very bright lights, and this thing kind of coasted over them. They said they felt that it was flat, uh, and in the middle they did see a red light that was a red light in the middle. So kind of
Hmm.
strange. You know what's funny too is somebody noted and online in one of the social media that it's weird. There are lots of black triangle sightings, but for the most part, um, the configuration of the lights is not always exactly the same.
Right. But a lot of times you do hear about a red or amber light in the very center,
Hmm.
which makes me wonder if that has anything to do with propulsion or anti-gravity or who knows what the heck it is.
Hmm. It reminds me of those cookies. What are those cookies with the jelly in the middle? I always think of
Oh
that for
yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
reason.
Oh yes. From Archway or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
those are
know what you
yummy.
mean.
Those are delicious.
Yummy.
But yeah, so it is kind of weird. And I had Sean Kevin Jason on last week talking about black triangles, and he had a good point because he felt that it might have seemed like they're rimmed with lights so that they can have those lights on in different configurations if they want.
I had someone write me one time, and I thought it was kind of a good point. They said, "Why do they even have any lights at all? Why would they need lights?"
Hmm.
Have you ever actually contemplated that yourself?
Yeah, well, Lee Spiegel is always asking that question. Why
Ah,
would a UFO, an extraterrestrial craft, need lights? They wouldn't need any lights. So why do they have them? He doesn't have an answer, and neither do I. One answer could be for our benefit,
yeah.
or many of these things also, like Sean Kevin Jason feels, are black projects, or they're human-made crafts. So of course they would need lights, but even our craft, like our jets, go into a IR mode. So essentially, they turn off all of their visible lights and they use their infrared lights and they put on infrared, you know, uh, glasses so they can see each other. So I don't
Hmm.
know. It's a great question, and I kind of like the idea for possibly our benefit because
Hmm.
I kind of feel like if they wanted to be seen, they would.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing about a black ops project or some a secret craft, um, boy, it'd be kind of exciting if we actually have cracked out cracked the anti-gravity thing and also, propulsion without sound. That would be amazing. But again, I've had another listener kind of argued with me about the fact that these are overpopulated areas. Why would they be if they're military? And he says it's very simple. That's how they need to learn how to fly over different terrains. And I don't know. Uh,
Or it would be like Sean Kevin Jason feels. I mean, I think he had made some great points. He had an amazing sighting where this black triangle appeared above him. And so Lee Spiegel had a sighting like that.
all
All the
right. Yeah.
people here in Phoenix, Arizona had a sighting like that. So
Hmm.
his theory is that they want people to see them occasionally, and it's like a psyops kind of project where they want people to believe that these black triangles are extraterrestrial, and so they want to be seen above populated areas at times, just so we think that they're not human. So and that
Wow.
kind of hide their technology in plain sight, and that
That's
makes a
kind of
lot of
like
sense.
that's kind of like what they talked about, what they did with stealth, or the what was the real high altitude spy plane?
The SR-71.
Right. So they claim they basically let them be called UFOs because along the same lines of what you're saying right here.
Yeah, so who knows? But I'm like you. I think that that's really exciting. If they turn out to be human made, um, I felt more excited about this when I was younger because it means that we have this amazing technology, and
Right.
this technology eventually will get released to the public. And that means in my lifetime, I could be taking a trip to space. And I follow very closely the commercial space projects and the
Yeah.
space tourism. Not that I'm know that I'll be able to afford to do anything like that, but the whole reason I've been in this field, and I actually was an engineering major when I first went into college because I wanted to be a rocket scientist. I wanted to get into this sort of stuff. I just, would love to travel in space. I mean, traveling in space fascinates me, and that may even
It is
be
amazing.
my main motivation for just being in this field for ideas that either we can already do it or some other civilization can. So somebody can give me a ride, and I want a ride, damn it.
Well, Alejandro, you're a rocket scientist to me.
Oh, thanks,
That makes you.
buddy.
But
Yeah.
hey, at the very least, we may get real hoverboards out of this. You
Oh,
know?
yo, I wouldn't touch that. I'm too old and too clumsy. I don't want to get on a longboard. All the kids are doing these longboards and stuff. I'll kill myself. Or at least I'll fall down and it'll hurt a lot. And I guess when you get older, you've fallen down more and you realize that falling down actually hurts a lot. I don't
Yeah.
want to do that anymore.
Yeah. Especially when you're in the ice and snow in the East Coast.
But you would
They're
get on a
always,
hoverboard?
no, 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 no. Are you kidding me? No.
Now, a Luke Skywalker kind of hovercraft like thing, that would be fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just punch in where you want to go and just sit back and relax. That'd
Mm.
be fine.
Pop your droids in the back seat and
Yeah.
go for a ride.
Right.
All right, well, that's it. You have any other news you wanted to talk about, buddy?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, have you shaved your
Except
head yet? Oh,
I
sorry.
am shaving my head in 2 days, and
Wow.
I'm starting to get butterflies, but I'm
Yeah,
just gonna have it done. I'm just gonna do it.
yeah. Wow.
So anyway, if you haven't listened before, that's I'm raising money for children with cancer and their families, and you can find that information in the sidebar over at podcastufo.com. And that's coming up in 2 days. I'm going to be bald like a cue ball.
Wow, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Hey,
Cool.
and we're at 76% of the goal. So
Oh,
had some
awesome.
we've had some great donations.
Awesome. That's great. So everybody donate. It's worthwhile.
That's right. Thanks, Alejandro.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks for being on the show yet again, Martin. let's go ahead and listen to this exciting interview with Professor Paris. I am very happy to welcome Professor Antonio Paris to the show. I think last time you were on the show, you weren't a professor.
No, I was still up in D.C. doing defense contractor work and chasing UFOs up in Maryland and D.C.
At the Pentagon. Well, you weren't chasing UFOs for the Pentagon, but you were working at the Pentagon?
No, and that's what's the funny part. You know, when you are associated with MUFON and all of a sudden your real job, which pays the bills and all the other stuff, is at the Department of Defense, people love to merge the two. And the first thing they'll say, well, since you are, what do you know about UFOs at the Pentagon? And then we go down that lane, which I hate to go down, but two separate things. And yeah, so I'm no longer there. I'm here in Florida doing some cool astronomy.
But I mean, your UFO work, I'm assuming, I'm guessing, didn't have a negative impact on your job. That's not why you left. You left to pursue some other passions, right?
Yeah, basically it was a family issue. My dad had passed away, and my mother was up here in Florida or down here in Florida. And I had made that promise that if things got to the worst, I would move down to Florida to be with my family. And that's basically what happened. Nothing to do with my job. I'm still in contact with my friends and my bosses up in DC. And it was a internal private issue that I had to keep a promise.
Well, now you're doing exciting stuff. You're a professor of astronomy at St. Petersburg College, right?
Yep.
And then you're also working at the Museum of Science and Industry?
Yeah, so I'm the director of space programs there, and they initially hired me to manage and train the planetarium staff there as well. And we also have some contracts with NASA to provide awareness programs and outreach programs. And we expanded that. So we have several astronomy programs there, including like telescope workshops, astrophotography workshops, a new lecture series called Space Talk. So every month we have like cool topics like black holes and wormholes. So we went from 2 to 3 space programs to about 17 space programs at Mosey in just over a year.
Cool. How exciting. And then you're also an astronaut candidate.
Yeah, so that was about a year ago. I was accepted into a project called Project Possum, and it's a private organization with NASA funding, of course, to study the upper mesosphere up in Alaska. So that training actually begins for me this September, which is out here in the Daytona at Embry-Riddle. And it's just a selection, which I'm really excited about. So the intent is that they will train a couple of dozen candidates with the intent of launching in 2017 2 to 4 astronauts. So I have a good shot. You know, it went from a couple of thousand in the pool of applicants to the selectees like myself. And so it's just an honor being accepted and doing the training. And hopefully I get selected. You know, I'll work hard through the little academy that they have and make sure that I'll do everything I can to make it on the flight.
A flight to space?
Yeah, it'll be a suborbital launch, and so we'll just cross the Karma line. We'll do some imagery analysis of these mesosphere clouds, and then they'll come back down and they'll go back up. So it's multiple suborbital flights.
That is so exciting. How cool.
It is really cool, but you know, I'm really motivated, and I just hope like there's no like cuts in funding or things like that that'll just rain on my parade. But you know, just being accepted is a big honor.
I'm really space geeking right now, and I'm not going to go there because I want to ask so much about space itself. I want to get into UFOs, but especially because I just watched the SpaceX launch, which luckily it was successful.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and they've got the Bigelow, another UFO.
The inflatable launch as well, and that's going to be exciting. And I was always a fan of that. You know, that's it's cheaper, it's deflatable as well from what I read. So, and as far as I did some little research out there, and allegedly they want to use these for perhaps these asteroid redirect missions here in a couple of
Oh,
years.
wow.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, so pretty exciting. So he's another UFO enthusiast. Now, to get it off, because I know people are going to be thinking about it, and just to get it out of the way,
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
sure people are thinking, okay, he worked for defense, he's working on these NASA projects. Have you gotten a sense? Some people, of course, are thinking, oh man, they must be hiding secrets, and Antonio must be have had to deal with people, maybe the Men in Black visiting him or stuff like this. Has that ever happened to you? I mean, did you get the sense that there
No.
was some interest there?
No, in fact, I would say that I myself has been branded as the Men in Black because people see I spent almost 20 years in the intelligence community, worked at the Pentagon, did a lot of overseas stuff. And my hobby is just UFOs. They have nothing to do with each other. And it's just funny that, when I used to work at the Pentagon and I just written my first book, all my colleagues and staff members in the Pentagon would laugh at me and people are going to ask that, have you seen anything here because you work at the Pentagon? And it was funny. They were mocking me and they called me, Mulder and all that funny stuff. And, 20 years in the government and I've never in my life, heard or even wanted to look for stuff that related to UFOs. And all the stuff that's UFO related has been private on my own money. Even going out to Area 51 where I did some research in a documentary. Again, nothing with the government. That was on my own dime. And I would never, I have no information whatsoever whether or not the government is still doing any type of UFO research. I think a lot of this stuff comes from just people, and it's not their fault. It's just a lot of TV, a lot of science fiction, and they try to put the two together. And I can't walk 3 feet, after talking about it brief, and immediately the words conspiracy or Antonio's part of the conspiracy, and I laugh at it, and there's nothing I can do. No matter what I do, I will always be part of the conspiracy, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And that's just not me. There's other friends that I know that are part of MUFON, and they have government jobs just like I used to have, and they get the same stuff.
Right. Yeah. Most of the people I knew were retired. But for instance, John Schuessler, who ran MUFON, James Carrion, or he worked for NASA. James Carrion worked in intelligence. He ran MUFON for a while. One of the board members retired recently. Tom Dooley worked in intelligence. And then, of course, John Alexander worked in intelligence. But they all have a similar story to you. Their jobs were just day-to-day jobs, and people knew they had an interest in UFOs, but it didn't have anything to do. They would lecture or tell their colleagues about UFOs, but it's not like officially, or job-related, anything like that ever came up.
And that's anywhere you go, whether you're a firefighter, a police officer, or a baseball player, or the president of the United States. Everyone has an interest in UFOs. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I had a lot of extra time to join MUFON, become a STAR team member and an assistant state director, and have fun, it was a good experience. I had really good investigations. I had heard some interesting stories, learned a lot about the MUFON's methods of investigations, and I was honored to be part of MUFON.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's and all of those people and yourselves, like you said, it happens to you as well. They get labeled. If they say there wasn't anything that they discovered, then of course they're lying and they're part of the conspiracy. But I've gotten to know all of those gentlemen very, very well. I've spent a lot of time, and they're just regular people with jobs, regular jobs and lives who, like everyone else, like yourself and myself, have an interest in the topic.
Yeah, and I still have an interest, and I'm still occasionally looking at some really cool cases. Not too many here in Florida, but we've got a couple cases. I still have my team members up in D.C., Michigan, and we get a couple 100 cases a year, and we probably do maybe 4 or 5 good cases a month. And
wow,
it's not a manpower thing. It's just we look at all the evidence and all the credibility of the witness, and out of every 10 cases we get, we narrow down to, okay, this case is is reasonable enough to actually investigate, and it's not something like most cases where we get, oh, I saw something 25 years ago. I'm like, okay, I can't do nothing with that, right? So we still, we're not as active as we were 3 or 4 years ago, but I think we narrowed it down to that we don't have to be that active because most cases really, come up with the same stuff. It's just a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really interesting. And I think what's interesting is all of this stuff that you do, and you still make time for UFO research. So it seems like you have a pretty strong passion towards it.
I do, and I'm, I just had a talk. What is her name? And I had a talk with a lady. She's the MUFON state director in Utah.
Erica Lukes. I just had her on the show last week, actually.
That's her, and we spoke about an hour on the phone yesterday, and she wants me to assist her in looking into these orange orbs and these orange lights that she keeps they keep reporting up in the Utah area. So we're gonna talk again next week and start looking at that stuff. Is it related to anything coming out of the proving grounds in Salt Lake? Is it part of the whole what do they call that? The Skinwalker Ranch area? So she's interested in that. We reached out to each other, and I think this summer, I'm going to go out to Utah and perhaps do an investigation with her and her team.
Mm-hmm. So in your investigation, or at least it's one thing to have proof, I guess it's another thing to have to speculate. But do you believe then that there is a genuine phenomenon? There's a mystery here when it comes to UFOs.
Oh, definitely. I cannot tell you that, what is it, 15, 20,000 reports a year, and I cannot tell you those are 20,000 crazy people. There's legitimate stuff being seen by very credible people, highly skilled, intelligent people, sometimes even multiple witnesses, and something's happening right now. Are they aliens? I don't know that. I hope they are. We all want that, right? We're all still interested in this, and I have not crossed that line yet. I've seen some really interesting cases. I've sat down with some highly intelligent people that have no reason whatsoever to try to hoax or get some fame out of this. And this is why I'm doing it. I've done this for about 12 years now, and if I thought there was nothing to it and they were just a bunch of loonies, I would have let this a long time ago, but I still get these occasional cases like, I need to call this gentleman or this lady and figure out what is it they saw. And then it gets more interesting when you get 2 or 3 people that have no relations with each other sending the same reports. And I think that's pretty cool.
Now, another thing that's pretty cool, and you're getting a lot of media for this, and which was kind of the main reason we're having you on right now, is this project that you're working on, and it's exciting to see Discover Magazine and all of these places also excited about this project, where you're going to try to recreate the WOW signal, correct?
Yeah. So the WOW signal is a almost a 40-year-old mystery that I've been interested for a long time. Some of my colleagues have been interested for a long time, and the short version is we detected a hydrogen signal back in August 77. And to this date, we really don't know what it was. And the way this came out was, Evan Davies, the colleague who wrote the paper with me, we were up in Washington, D.C. Last year. We had just left the Smithsonian, and the topic of the intelligence in the universe and the WOW signal came up. And we said, it has to be something. Is a natural phenomena? Is it extraterrestrial? But the big question was, why hasn't it returned? And the idea of the first thing that popped into my head was, could have been a long term or a long period comet or a short period comet, because we know they have some hydrogen. And and Evan and I, we've got the intelligence background and the investigative background, and we called this the crime scene. So we know that in August 15th, 1977, there was an emission signal that was detected. So we looked at that suspect. We looked at the what the suspect looked like, what time the suspect was in the crime scene area, and we had we read all the papers that were written. by the VLA, Ohio State, and they still could not detect, they still didn't know what it was. And we said, okay, let's revisit the crime scene. And we went to various legitimate websites, including JPL, NASA, and we used something kind of like a Wayback Machine. So we entered the right accession and declination values and the date. So on August 15, 1977, on the very same date that the wow signal was detected, oh, and by the way, in the very same area, which was in the constellation Sagittarius, there were two comets. And I said to myself, wait a minute, can this be right? So we spent almost 3 months making sure that the data was correct, that the wow signal was in this exact area. The wow signal was at this time, which was exactly 2316 Eastern Daylight Time. And we went back and checked 3 or 4 different databases to make sure that these comets were in that very same area, the same time, same date. And that's what it came down to. Hey, we've got a unknown 72-second hydrogen line signal, which found a specific frequency. And then we did research for a couple months on comets and the anatomy of comets and how comets transit and some of the hydrogen that's emitted from these comets. So that's what it came down to. We have a crime scene with a description of the suspect, and now we have 2 suspects that fit the suspect's background, but more importantly, were at the crime scene the day this event happened. So that's what we're trying to do. So, I cannot, it takes too long for me to get radio telescope time from the VLA or universities. Some of these people require like 3 or 4 years in advance, including up to perhaps even $1 million to get telescope time. So I said, you know what? I'm going to build my own telescope. I'm going to build my own radio telescope. So I reached out to various companies that build professional radio telescopes for universities, and I narrowed it down to 2 companies that said, okay, it's going to cost about $13,000 to $16,000. And I said, I'm going to start a crowdfunding effort here. And we're close. We're almost up to $8,000 now. And that's the idea. It's not to debunk. It's not to find alien signals. It's to see these 2 comets will come back around in January of 2017 and 2018. I'm going to shoot and point the telescopes and see if these comets, could be the culprits.
Wow.
And the good part is, Alejandro, is that if they're not the comets, it's still good science because now we've deduced those 2 guys. And so the important part, I think, of all this, you just said it, is that we have reopened the door to a discussion, to something that's kind of been quiet for probably 20 years now, the wow signal, and the media attention, all the interviews I've done, and all the people I've talked to. It's not, like I wrote a paper. When I wrote this paper, I did my due diligence. I sent it out to SETI. I sent it out to Ohio State. I sent it out to probably 20 or 30 different radio astronomers. They all came back with questions. A good handful don't think it's the comet, but they were like, go for it anyway. And the paper was peer reviewed by the astronomy community. So I think we have a good chance of, at a minimum, is trying to figure out if these were comets or not. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. The VLA, so people know, that's the Very Large Array in New Mexico. In fact, on my Facebook, that's where I'm at on that top picture. But I
also want to add that when the VLA, Ohio State, and several other organizations did go back in 1995, 96, 98, 99, and 2006, pointed their telescopes at that very same location for several weeks, and they detected nothing. So I went back and I wanted to make sure that the comets were not in the areas during all those searches. And guess what? They were not. So that could be a reason why the signal was intermittent. They heard it once, and every time they went back, the comet was already gone and not in the area. So I'm assuming that not just me, but a lot of people with radio telescopes will be pointing the dishes to Sagittarius here in January.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's exciting. Now, to understand this a little better, you said it was a hydrogen signal. How does a signal, or if I'm not sure if I'm even using the right terminology, but how is a signal hydrogen? Help me, a very layman, understand that.
If you look at all the elements and all the things in the universe, they all have specific frequencies. They emit specific frequencies. And in this case, in 1977, what was detected by the Big Ear telescope at the time was a very strong signal at the frequency that matches something known as the hydrogen line. And that is at 1420.405 megahertz. Comets, the hydrogen clouds of comets, have very similar anatomies. You know, comets are basically dirty snowballs, and as they get closer to the sun, they melt, and the hydrogen is emitted into space. Some comets, like Hale-Bopp, have hydrogen clouds. It's just massive hydrogen cloud, sometimes millions of miles in diameter. And if we have two comets with two massive hydrogen clouds, and those hydrogen clouds are basically the same frequency, perhaps they were the source of that signal in 1977.
Mm-hmm. And then if it's on this hydrogen line, and that's not something uncommon to find on comets, why did they write wow? What makes it a significant signal, and what makes it potentially extraterrestrial?
Well, two main things, and I think the first one is that in 1977, almost 40 years ago, the radio astronomy world, just like the technology world, was not as advanced as today. So looking up at the sky at that time and detecting something this strong was something that was very anomalous. It was like, wow, what is this? So when they saw that strong hydrogen signal, out of surprise, they wrote "wow" on it, and that became the nickname of the wow signal. But again, 40 years later, when you look at all the astronomy blogs and some of the NASA websites, they have detected signals that are just as strong and similar because of advancements in technology and radio astronomy, etc. So, and then going back to the second part of that question is that several astronomers, especially in the SETI community back in the 60s and 70s, they postulated that the potential extraterrestrials will probably use microwaves or radio signals using hydrogen for communications for long distances. So, and I think so back then, back technology, that hypothesis that aliens will use the hydrogen line for communications, that is what gave it the big emphasis of the wow.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything else in the signal that indicates technology or could possibly?
No, there's nothing. The only two things that makes it a really exciting signal is that, actually three things. It was very strong. It lasted for 72 seconds. And the third one is it's never been redetected, at least from that point in the Sagittarius constellation.
Mm-hmm. So when you were shopping around your hypothesis, essentially, and there were some who said, some of these astronomers had said, we don't think it is a comet.
Yeah.
Why did they think it would not be?
Well, the idea was that, or their I guess their personal, I guess their idea was that there wasn't enough data to suggest that comets could emit radio signals that strong. And when I told them, okay, but you have to read the background data. Like, I'm not going to put everything in the paper. So in the bibliography, for example, there's a lot of data in there from other astronomers to suggest that comets could potentially emit strong hydrogen signals that way. More importantly, now we have two comets. So when you put the two hydrogen clouds together, it makes for a stronger and massive comet. And more importantly, for a very rare event. The unfortunate thing that I didn't talk about is that at that time in 1977, the orbital parameters for these two comets placed them in the same location for that rare event. And we won't see this same event again for about 600 years when the two comets are back in the same place.
Mm-hmm. So when they come around in January, they're going to be in a different configuration. Will they not be as close?
They'll be just as close. Orbits follow the same orbits. My only concern is that it's been 40 years, and these comets probably have lost some mass. So it's gone around the Derby 40 times, and if there's anything we know about comets, is that they get smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so perhaps the radio signals won't be strong. But what I would really like to see is that all this enthusiasm that's built up is that we're gonna have. There's already one of my neighbors is already building his radio telescope for January, so we're starting to see. I think a lot of people that are going to point their telescopes, and the more data we get, the better. And my goal is to set up a network here in January where people can point their telescopes, and if they have any data, they can just submit it, and we can put it all collectively together. And who knows? May I have a good feeling it could be the comments, and if it's not, it's. Someone asked me the other day, "Are you going to be upset if it's not the comments?" I'm like, no. Why would I be upset? It's science,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting either way. I mean, if it is the comets, it's really exciting because, you were able to lead the way to make this discovery, and certainly the news will cover it quite a bit, and then we'll have an ending to the WOW story finally after all of these years. However, if it's not it, then it adds to the mystery, and the mystery continues.
The mystery continues, and and we can look at other things. The good thing about the radio telescope is that it won't be dismantled. So the intent is that in between research, we're going to use it for other galactic research, and we'll switch out the receivers. And I'm really interested in pulsars and quasars, and I want to do some of that research while the other comet comes around in 2018. So it benefits everyone. We're gonna try to figure out what this mystery is. If we detect that there are comets, then that's great. If they're not, that's still great, because we can rule that out. And just like we love a good mystery. And if it'll be a cold case if it's not the comets, and we'll just continue looking for the answer. I'm not looking to debunk it. I'm personally hoping that perhaps it could be extraterrestrial, right? That'd be kind of neat.
Yeah.
And, if it's not, then we keep looking.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're crowdfunding the radio telescope, correct?
Yep.
Cool. And how is that going?
It's going pretty good. I didn't think I was gonna get this far away this quick, and I think my goal was $13,000 is about what the telescope, the receiver, and telescope receiver and the LNA, the feed horn, would cost. So I was like, oh my God. And the lead time for this is 16 weeks. So even when I get the money, it takes them 16 weeks to build it and send it. So I was like,
wow.
Time is short. So when I put out the crowdfunding about almost 3 weeks ago, I was like, this is going to take forever. And I was amazed that we're over halfway now. We're at almost at 8,000.
Awesome. And so when do you have to have that money?
No later than July. So we have plenty of time to get it by July, so we can submit the purchase order. Telescope will be done we're looking hopefully by August. And then I want to play with it. September to December is to actually learn how to use it, and perhaps do some extra research, and then look at some other comets that might be in the area. And then just get, basically a rehearsal for January.
Cool. So, where are you crowdfunding it?
It's at GoFundMe, and it's just called the Wow Signal Experiment.
Okay, awesome. And would you offer people, like, if they donated, they could come, in January maybe and check it out or something?
Oh, yeah. So we do want to host like a little sky party. Sky watch is for regular astronomy, but we're already talking about hosting a sky watch for that night. Some rules like no cell phones, and things like that, because it'll ruin some of the reception. But not only that, everyone that has been donating so far, we're actually having a plaque made with everyone's name really micro, encased in there. So everyone's name will be etched onto the actual telescope, which would be kind of cool.
That's really cool. Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be a lot of fun.
It is going to be fun, yeah, and it's so science is fun, right?
Uh-huh. Science is awesome. So, I feel, anyway. But
people tend to think of science like old, boring people in labs, growing old and cheese doodles on their breath, and it's not. It's fun and it's exciting, and even today with social media and all the networking involved, it gets even more exciting.
It is fun, and I think people in the UFO field get frustrated because science sets a very, very high bar.
Yeah.
And I think so a lot of people get disillusioned and they don't even want to strive for it. But I think it's exciting. I think it's something, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So
Yeah.
how extraordinary would it be to get there? So why not strive to meet
It takes
that bar?
work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to do it the right way. So it wasn't like I just said, I tweeted, okay, I think I know what the wow signal is. I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah.
We worked on our paper for a year, so we did a lot of research. We had a lot of work. We talked to NASA. We visited several, tons of locations that were related to NASA to make sure our data was correct. And then we peer reviewed it. We sent it to the Washington Academy of Sciences, which the chair up there is part of the American Astronomical Society. They loved it. They sent it back and made us do some corrections. And it was peer reviewed research. So that's part one. And some people just don't have the stomach or the patience to do that kind of stuff, like writing for a year before you physically go out and do the investigation and the research.
Mm-hmm. Having worked with these people and being an astronomer yourself, what do you say to people who suspect SETI has gotten signals, but they're hiding that information, or that even if they did, they wouldn't get that to the public?
I heard that in the last few weeks, there's been all kinds of conspiracies going around that Antonio SETI is telling you they're not comments because they don't want you to debunk it or find the truth, or that they do have radio signals. I don't like to, as much as fun those things are, and I read all the conspiracy websites and blogs for fun. SETI is a 40, 50-year-old entity. People have come and gone. That information would have leaked a long time ago. And that's my gut feeling. Like actual data, not just rumors. Like, this is what, people, deathbed confessions, all that stuff that we hear at the UFO community. I think something like that would have probably already would have been out in the open. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to gain from that. I know they are a nonprofit and their funds are driven by donations, but I would suspect that if they did have something, bringing it out into the open would actually be potentially better for them, because the money would just pour in for, like, okay, keep researching where, so I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's almost like there's two different ideas. There's the idea that SETI is just there for show. It's so the government can pretend like they're looking for ETs, even though a lot of people don't know that SETI isn't a government organization. Or
they still think it's government. Yeah.
And then there's the other train of thought, or that's not as prominent in the UFO field, but in the mainstream, is that this is scientists who are interested in the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence putting their best foot forward and at least doing something to try to discover whether or not that scenario is true.
Yeah, and most people don't understand that SETI is bigger than looking for life in the universe. They are doing a lot of stuff in the astronomy field, radio astronomy. And during my own personal research, I've learned that because of SETI, the radio telescope technology has catapulted. I mean, they have gone from like ones and zeros and those old computer cards to like the amazing technology we have today because of SETI. So just like Apple and Google, those people that have catapulted technology, in the astronomy world, SETI has that's their part. That's what they've done to us. They've given us so much. And they're more than just life in the universe. They're looking at galaxies now and habitable worlds and extrasolar planets, and so they're doing a lot of stuff that's not even SETI related.
Mm-hmm. Right, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And that's why it seems like, since you are familiar, a lot of people are concerned that the SETI community doesn't respect UFO research. Do you find that to be the case?
Yeah, I find that to be the case in a lot of situations, not just SETI, and it all just comes down to Um, if you look at the UFO phenomena, it always comes down to things like distance travel, the technologies and energy requirements for interstellar travel. And the old SETI, which is still around, they've contrived that if there's no doubt about it, they all think and believe that there's life out there in somewhere in the Milky Way galaxy or perhaps other galaxies, but them getting their UFOs and coming down here, they don't just buy it. I think that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that SETI doesn't believe in aliens; it's that they don't believe that the aliens themselves have traveled to here and been, abducting people for the last, millennia.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's funny is that commonality, that belief in extraterrestrial intelligence is a big deal. I mean, you're talking about mainstream scientists. So, for instance, your project is really exciting to many scientists, you have found, and so is a wow signal. I mean,
Yeah.
they're really interested in the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence.
Well, it comes down to the math. If you look at the observable universe, there's what 10 septillion potential stars out there, and if you only take 1% of that, there are potentially 100 billion planets out there, in just our Milky Way alone. So it's an exciting time. It's only been in 1997 we found our first extrasolar planet, and now almost 20 years later we're in the thousands of finding these planets, and some of them are probably Earth-like, hopefully. And so as technology grows, we're learning more about the universe and the math. If all the things involved that were required for us to be here, right? The sun, the earth, evolution, time is important. And we do a comparative search of other objects that look like ours, a similar sun, similar planet, similar atmospheres and gravity, then the numbers are astronomical, So my personal belief is that there should be life out there. And the only problem is distance. It's just so far away. I mean, it takes 10 years just to get to Pluto, right? So
Yeah.
imagine another star system.
But you feel, I mean, with your interest in the UFO field, I mean, I'm assuming that you feel it is possible that there is a civilization out there that's conquered that problem.
There has to be, in my opinion, and that's my personal opinion, that there has to be life in the universe in all stages of advancement or in their evolution. So there has to be life in the universe that are still microbial. There has to be life in the universe that are just getting out of their caves for intensive purposes speaking. There has to be life in the universe that are millions of years advanced from us, and that their technology, if they have technology, has to be far in advance than us. And so there has to be life out there in all stages of what we call intelligent life. And who knows, perhaps some have conquered the long distances of travel, and I just have not seen it here. There are conspiracies, oh, they're here, they're hiding, we're not ready. That could be a fact. I'm not saying that's not true, but just like you, I just want to know if they're here, why don't they make themselves known? And more importantly, I want to know, how did they get here? What was the technology involved to make it through those long journeys? Perhaps they were generational. Do our laws apply universally? I know the speed limit for us is the speed of light, but does that apply to other lives out there? Were they able to conquer that? So I'm really, that's the excitement that I like, is that you and I, we're constrained to our beliefs, our maths, our science, our theories. That doesn't mean that something else out there has conquered those theories.
Mm-hmm. And it could be, do you think it could be that they have been able to get here? It's just that they only allow glimpses.
That's a possibility. There's people that say they could be interdimensional theory. They're using time travel. They're using portals, like up in Utah. I've heard those stories before. Multi-universes, they can just come and go and things like that. That's a possibility. Those are things I would love to entertain. The difficulty is trying to investigate and collect data is the important thing for me. The data, I need data to actually crunch and investigate, and more importantly, try to replicate. That's what the science, the whole science cycle is you experiment, and that's unfortunately we just can't get that in the UFO community. We get the interviews, we might collect some evidence like photographic or video, maybe some trace evidence. Sometimes allegedly there's some radiation left behind, but sitting down and interviewing the alien or looking at their actual spacecraft or mode of transportation is the part we're lacking. Some people say, "Oh, the government's got it. It's hiding somewhere in Area 51." That could be true. I'm not saying it's not true, but I have not seen it.
Yeah, we don't have the data exactly. I mean, some people get frustrated because I've said several times in interviews, and I think it's important to the mainstream, you say it very quickly, that we don't have proof of something like alien abduction. We don't have that data, but, a lot of people claim to be communicating with aliens, so, I mean, it's a possibility, but we don't have that data.
We have a lot of information. We have a lot of it's good. A lot of it's crap. You know there's a lot of garbage on the internet, but there's a lot of good data out there. But you need more than data. You can come up with all different hypotheses, like I did with my wow signal, right? That's just an hypothesis. That's good data. But I need to go to step 2 now, and that's actually look at the comets, track the comets, see if they're emanating any signals. That there's my evidence for lack of purposes, and then deduce whether or not these guys were it. I don't have that in the UFO community. I don't have nothing to physically touch, analyze, and determine whether this specific thing is extraterrestrial. Who knows? Maybe it's out there. Maybe someone found it. The only thing I can say is I have not personally seen it. My team has not seen it. And as far as I know, MUFON has not seen it. MUFON's got a lot of great cases and evidence and anecdotal evidence, but and I always like to leave it as when I visit the Smithsonian and there's an actual alien craft there, then we can close the shop.
Yeah. So given that, when your colleagues, and I'm sure it happens, ask you, why do you, take this UFO thing so seriously, what do you tell them?
It's my passion. That's everyone has a passion. People like to scuba dive. People like to jump out of planes. And I think that given my background in science and investigations, that I can contribute to this. It's really a truly amazing phenomena, right? It's a cult now. There's a big following. It's almost like a religion. But the most important thing is when you have, for example, a retired FBI agent sit down with me and tell me, Antonio, I'm married. I love my job. And this is what I saw. I was not drunk. I was not tired driving throughout the night. This is what I saw. Can you please help me try to explain what it is? And when we're talking about like a football-sized black triangle that's making zero noise, it's hovering, and his phone shuts off, his car shuts off, you want to say, what? Okay, you want to dig deeper and figure out what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Well, cool. Well, thank you. I think we're about out of time, but this is so interesting. We'll definitely put the link to the GoFundMe in the page. And do you have another page where you have like your UFO research?
Yeah, the UFO research is aerial-phenomenon.org.
Mm-hmm. Aerialphenomena.org. And I guess another thing, just to mention, something else that you work on is education.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me. In fact, next week, at least once a week, I go to high schools, elementary schools, Catholic schools, you name it. And there's in Florida, the Department of Education in Florida did a survey statewide to see what interests the kids had in school, and space was their number one thing. Astronomy and space. And we've been doing so much outreach talking about Mars, talking about Jupiter, the moon Io and Europa, all the cool technologies in space. And recently now the WOW signal. So I did my first talk last week at a conference, and so yeah, I love it's nothing makes my day, Alejandro, than watching a 8-year-old kid looking through a telescope and seeing Saturn for the first time and saying, "This is what I want to do when I grow up." And I'm like, "Holy cow!" So I give them a book, I sign it for them, and those kids are really excited.
And this outreach is all part of the Center for Planetary Science?
It's Center for Planetary Science and the Museum of Science and Industry. So it's both hats that I'm tackling for outreach.
Okay. Well, awesome. It's such exciting stuff. We'll have to stay in touch. It's really exciting to see, I mean, how much has happened for you in the last year. And I've just been really delighted. And I don't know if you've noticed, I've been tweeting and Facebooking all the stories about your WOW Signal project
Yeah, I saw that.
have
Great
been coming
stuff.
across. So
Really appreciate it.
thank you
Yeah,
so much for being on the show again.
hopefully next time we talk, we have an answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much to Antonio, or Professor Paris, I should say, for being on the show. What a cool name, Professor Paris. Sounds like a character on Doctor Who. I've been just binge watching Doctor Who lately, which has been wonderful. Thank you to Amazon. Anyway, it was great to have him on the show to talk about his interest in UFOs and his project. It's so great that his project is getting so much media attention. So if right now you go Google the WOW signal, you'll probably find the stories about him and his project, especially if you click the news tab there. You'll see everything that he's up to right now. And so that's really cool. And it's cool that he has a genuine interest in UFOs and, is curious about what's going on. So people like this, I think, are great advocates, especially people with backgrounds like his, for this field and helping us find new answers to this old phenomenon. So it's very exciting. Thank you so much. Go and check out his Kickstarter and keep tabs on him. And maybe if you live in the area, if you're in Florida, you can go check out his Skywatch in January and be part of what may be history in the making. I mean, if they find out it's a comet, that'll be big news, and that'll be a part of the WOW signal, mythology or the story out there. And the WOW signal is definitely something that interests media and just people out there all over the place because of what it could represent. But as we talked about, either way, I think the news is going to be very interested in their findings. So it'd be fun to be a part of that. In fact, I'm going to be visiting Florida for the first time in August. That's right. I have actually never been to Florida before. And it sounds like a wonderful place, so I'm excited to be going there. I'll be going there for the MUFON Symposium, and I'm going to be speaking about official government UFO agencies. So these are agencies that governments sponsor throughout the world, but the reasons why these organizations have started are typically because of some incredible sightings. So some really interesting history out there that I don't think many people know about. I mean, some just amazing sightings that are so amazing they caused their government to begin investigating the UFO phenomena. How cool is that? So that'll be my first trip to Florida because the MUFON Symposium will be in Florida in late August. So you can check out MUFONsymposium.com for that, or go to openminds.tv and you'll be able to look on the events page and see more about that. Also, at openminds.tv, you're going to find all the news that Martin and I spoke of earlier in the show. You'll also find more information about that guy, that goofball, shaving his head. He'll be a real goofball. His head will be like a cue ball. And he's shaving his head, though, for an excellent reason, to help children with leukemia. And at podcastufo.com, you can find out more about that. And go pledge some money. I did that myself. But, go donate to this wonderful cause. Lots of stuff to donate to during the tax season here. Another plug, I mean, if you go to my Facebook, you'll find that I'm trying to help raise money for the Robotics Club at Red Mountain High School here in Mesa, Arizona, because Rihanna, one of my best friends and also
my girlfriend's daughter, is part of the robotics club, and so they very awesomely were able to win their regionals this last weekend, and they're going to go to the world competition. But they need some money to pay for travel and everything. But they always need some money because these robots are expensive to build. But really cool stuff. You can find out more about that at my Facebook. So yeah, get out the checkbook and start writing some checks. Or actually, these days you just click some buttons online and send your money to and fro. I should know because I'm doing this all the time, as many of us probably are. But you do not have to spend money to listen to this radio show. How wonderful is that? And I am so happy that you all do come and listen to the show. I'm also very grateful to Caleb Hanks, who does the opening and close music, and to everyone else involved. So thank you. That means you, the listener. Yeah, you sitting there, or you driving on the road, or you typing and doing something exciting at work, or most